Has it come through?
Yes, it's come through. Thanks, Rav. Thanks a lot. Yeah, wonderful.
Okay.
Sure, there's a lot happening on the street, right?
There's a lot happening.
Rabbi, any good news in Israel? What's happening?
Please God.
Any
messages Hamas won't release anymore. They said until a full-time ceasefire.
Because the leaders were taken out.
Some were, but they haven't got the big ones. They haven't got the big ones.
They said they got.
You've got to get this Yahya Sinwar. This is the one they should have.
Yeah.
They're both in Qatar.
No, he's in Gaza.
Sinwar's in Gaza, according to what they say. Gentlemen,
Maybe he's off.
They did it and destroying thousands and thousands of homes. You see them laying up the tunnel.
okay, gentlemen, let's learn, and then we can say l'chaim and chat afterwards. Let's learn together. Yeah, let's learn together, and we have in mind our people. Hashem should bench them. Yeah, maybe just a good word to start with. We've got Vayeshev coming up this week. Vayeshev is the story of Yosef, of Joseph. And it begins, which was actually yesterday's piece of the Parsha Rishon, Vayeshev Yaakov be'eretz megurei aviv, and Yaakov dwelled in the land of the sojourning of his father. And then it says, Eila told us Yaakov Yosef. These are the generations of Yaakov, Joseph, Yosef. And the sages ask, Rashi asked, why is it talking specifically about Yosef there, about Joseph? What about the others? What is the meaning of this? Because there is a piece over here we could find quite inspiring for today's day and age. So what it says over there, that when the Parsha of Vayishlach ended, that means the last part of Vayishlach last week, the Torah was counting the alufim, the chieftains, the captains of Esav. And you have a whole piece at the end of Vayishlach, which makes it sound like the thugs, the barbarians of the world are many, because you've got so many alufim. Esav has developed a huge army of people.
Yeah.
You see that at the end of Vayishlach. And one can start to worry, like we do in today's day and age. You can start to feel intimidated. What will be? Seh Pazura Yisrael, it says Israel, the Jewish people in this big world are like a little lamb, like a little bird or a little lamb, metaphorically. What is going to happen if there's such a big, powerful Esav? It talks about all these big chieftains and captains and whatever, and thugs that are listed out at the end of Vayishlach. And Rashi says to understand it, he turns to a mashal, to a metaphor. And he says that Hapechomi Azeh, this blacksmith, you know what a blacksmith is? A guy that works with metal. He knocks things into shape. He's standing there in his stall, in his shop at the edge of a town, and he sees the flax merchant, the merchant that's selling flax he's obviously very well laden, he's bringing his stock into the town, into the city. And he sees tens and tens and tens, maybe hundreds of camels loaded with flax, loaded with this material, this pishton. And he turns to his friend and he says, look at all of this. Look at all this pishton. Look at all this flax. Where's it going to go? Where's there a warehouse in this town that can fit all of that material? And his friend turns to him and says in jest, he says, one spark from your hammer and it's all gone in a moment, and there's nowhere that it needs to go. One spark from your hammer that you clap down over there, and all these camels laden with flax are over. And basically, Rashi says that this is basically what the Torah is saying. Yosef is called Lahava, is called a flame, is called a fire. And Hashem is telling the Jewish people, don't be frightened when you see the alufim, when you see all the captains and the chieftains of Esav. Yeah, don't be frightened at all, because you should know we've got one spark, one flame called Joseph, called Yosef. And that one spark can wipe out all of this flax in a few moments. And please God, we should be zeicher, we should merit that in this great war between good and evil, that good should prevail. Am Yisrael, Eretz Yisrael, and there should only be bracha. There should be blessing in the world for all the good people. Manket Rav Sheshes. So we'll start again with that with those lines. It is 42b. Mem Beis Amud Beis. We did read it already, but Mem Beis Amud Beis. On the Safari numbering, it's 14. Line 14. But I'll find it here. Manket Rav Sheshes. It's right over there. From there, we're going to read. So just to put us in context, we did start reading this, but we're going to read it again, and then we can complete the piece. We were talking about basing ourselves on the Mishnah that we had learned earlier, and we were talking about people who find, I don't know what you want to call it, artifacts, kalim, vessels, and they want to know if the vessel that has been found was used for avodah zarah, for idolatrous purposes, or was it not? Are we allowed to have benefit from it or not? And the Mishnah had said that you have to examine what kind of figure or image is on this particular vessel, because certain images and figures are associated with idolatry, certain aren't. And then in a further discussion, what the Gemora starts to unpack over here is, in general, what were the sages talking about? In other words, what was the context when they said that these are symbols of idolatry, but these aren't? These are symbols of idolatry, but those are exceptions. Were they talking about for craftsmen? Were they telling us that if you are a man, we were just talking about the blacksmith, if you're a man that sculpts things or creates things, there are things that you should shape and things that it's not a good idea to run those shapes or figures, because you don't want to make something that is likened to what the world uses for avodah zarah? Or are we talking about finding something? And there's a big difference, as this Gemara will discuss, between moitze, which means finding something that somebody else made, and trying to determine whether the thing that you found was in fact used for avodah zarah or not. Or you're a craftsman, you've got your own factory where you bang things into shape and you knock them into shape, or you might, how would you call it, carve or sculpt or whatever it is. And what kind of figures or images or symbols are you allowed to utilize and what are you not? And the Gemara brought down Rav Sheshes. Rav Sheshes sort of consolidated and packaged the story of all of these figures. Manket Rav Sheshes Chumra Masniyasa. Rav Sheshes consolidated the rules of the Mishnah. But Tane, and he learned it as follows. Rav Sheshes said, divide this, you always got to make things easy. Summarize it, turn it into a package. So Rav Sheshes says, let's put it into 3 levels, 3 categories. The Tana, he learned as follows. All of the celestial stuff, the astronomical stuff, the stars and the planets and the comets and all of the stuff that has a shape that's in the heavens above, the hosts of above, are all okay. In other words, they're generally not considered to be idolatrous symbols, except for the sun and the moon. So that was statement 1. And any facial images, people like to put faces. All of the faces are okay, mutarin are permissible, parts of Adam, except for facial images that are the image of a human face. So if it's a lion or an ox or an eagle or another creature, it would be okay. And the Gemara is going to discuss, what does he mean? What is okay? Making it, finding it. Those are the 2 big issues. And all forms are permissible, all figures and forms that aren't faces or celestial constellation kind of things. Except for the form of that kind of mythological dragon, the snake-shaped dragon, which the Gemora will discuss what shape it's talking about. We might not be talking about, the magic author's dragon. So there's Rav Sheshes telling you, this is it. Anything in the constellations except for the sun and the moon, any kind of face except for a human face, that's number 2. And lastly, any kind of animal figure except for the dragon figure. The Gemara wants to unpack, what does he mean? Does he mean make it or find it? Omar Mar. So a certain sage, anonymous sage, the master said, he's focusing on Rav Shesh's first statement out of the 3. Rav Sheshes had said all the mazolos, all of the stuff in the sky, the constellations are permissible, with the exception of the symbol of sun and moon. What are we talking about over here? What are we dealing with? Glassman were saying, if you're going to make things and you want to use that theme, you want to use the theme, call it astronomical signs. He's a force. It wouldn't seem to be okay to carve out or form things using any of the stuff from up in the heavens. Never mind the sun and the moon. Rav Shesh's statement was that sun do not make together with me. Okay. Back on again. Yeah. We started this piece. We didn't finish it. We started it. That there are various verses to do with Avodah Zarah, to do with idol worship. And one of them says, Lo yisasuni ti, do not make with me. Lo yisasun kidemus shamoshai, don't you make anything like my attendants. Hamashamshin lefana serve me on high. In other words, what the sages extract is Hashem is saying, don't make artistic or formed copies of any of my things in the celestial spheres. Doesn't matter if it's a sun or a moon. Doesn't matter if it's stars, comets, shooting stars, planets, other shapes in the Milky Way. It would seem that Hashem doesn't want us to make anything based on those shapes and those figures. So therefore, why would Rav Sheshes say sun and the moon in this first statement is not talking about the craftsman? He's talking about the finder, the archaeological digger, the person who is finding and discovering things that someone else made. But might say the finder. Okay, and that is similar to the expression in our Mishnah. Our Mishnah spoke about people finding stuff. It didn't talk about people making stuff. Okay, as we learned in our Mishnah, where it said, Hamaitze Kalim, somebody finds the Kalim. Va'alayim, and upon the vessels that he finds, Tzuras Chama is an image of sun, Tzuras Levana, or an image of moon, Tzuras Daraka, and an image of dragon. And over there we said, if he finds something that has these images, they would indicate that these things are Avodah Zarah Kalim, Avodah Zarah vessels. And he has to get rid of it and destroy it. As we said there, he has to take them to the salt sea, he has to throw them out in a place where nobody will use it, nobody will benefit from it. So basically what the Gemora has figured out is that the first of Rav Shesh's 3 statements must apply to finding, not to forming. Finding would be a problem, the sun and the moon, the other stuff wouldn't be a problem. If you're forming it as a craftsman, then all those things are a problem. So then the Gemara continues and says, if the context of Rav Shesh's statement, as you're saying here, is about somebody who discovers or finds stuff, then let's have a look at his middle statement. Look at his middle statement. What was the middle statement that Rav Sheshes made? He spoke about faces. Look at the middle statement, where it says, Kol ha-partzufa is mutarin, all facial images are permissible, chutz mi-partzuf adam, with the exception of the facial expression of a human. That was what he said in the statement. The facial images of animals and other type of facial images, fairies, whatever you want to draw them in funny ways, comic things, caricatures, all fine. But if it's a proper human form, a human face, then it's no good. But hold on a second.
What about art?
Sorry?
Well, obviously, these are vessels.
Animal face, safety.
What about a
So
painting?
basically,
Worship.
Yeah. So basically, this goes very much by what could have been the trend in a particular time or a particular culture. Like we know that at the time that the Jews left Egypt, lambs and sheep were what they worshipped. That was their deity. You could bring, I don't know what, a wolf or how would you call it, or a bird or something else, and it wasn't a deity in that day and age. So basically, the concept was what would be the deity in a particular place. I think, is it the Hindus that have the thing with the cows?
No.
Yeah, with the cows. So basically, it depends where and when you are, because it can change. It can change from culture to culture. It can change from land to land. But we're trying to figure out the context of what Rav Sheshes said. And Rav Sheshes had said, Kol ha'partzufos mutarin, that all facial images are permissible except for the human image. The problem then, obviously, was that those that were involved in idolatry seemed to dwell more on human faces than on animal faces. But the Gemora asks, if we're talking, if the context is that somebody finds an image, parts of Adam Yasur says that the image of human faces is that my God? Who says that the image of human faces is prohibited? Parts of Adam Yasur. Because we learned in another place that human faces are not a problem. We learned in a Mishnah, he finds vessels. That Mishnah only gave 3 no's. It said the image of the sun, the moon, or the draken, or the dragon. Then he has to throw it out in the Salt Sea. Tzuras draken in, an image of a dragon is a problem. Parts of Adam Loi, the image of a face of a person is not. We see in another Mishnah very clearly that the human face as an image is not a problem. So basically, and that Mishnah said that if you find an article, there are only 3 symbols you have to worry about. Don't forget also, they worked very much by what was likely in a particular time, what was likely with a particular type of article. At that point, they were saying that the problem is mostly if you find something and they put they've shaped on it a dragon or a sun or a moon, you've got a problem. Anything else is not a problem. Anything else is not a problem, including a human face is not a problem. So why would you say, according to Rav Sheshes said human faces are a problem? So the Gemara says, but you have to say that Rav is concerned about making something with a human face, not something with a human face. All of these subtleties are different. Rav Sheshes said that the human face is a problem when it comes to making. A Jew should not sculpture something with a human face. But if he finds something that somebody else put a human face on, not necessarily is it avodah zarah. And the Gemara quotes this principle. This is based on the principle or the teaching of Rav Huna, son of Rabbi Yeshua. What did he say? Rav Huna, brother Rav Yeshua, said, he said that where it says in the pasuk, in the verse, Hashem says, you shouldn't make with me or for me gods of silver or gods of gold. Gods of silver and gods of gold with reference to the figure or form of a person who was created in the image of God. The Torah says when Adam and Chava were created, when the first man and first women were created, it says over there, Zachar and Nekeva, B'tzelem Elokim asoes Adam, that God created man in his own image. It says that God created man in his image. So when God says, don't make with me gold and silver images, our sages say what God is saying is don't make images that look like people. In other words, people look like me. The form of people is a manifestation of God in this world. the thing in this world in creation that looks most like Hashem above are human beings, are people. We are created more than any other creation, but Tselem Elokim, in God's image. So when God said, don't make gods of gold and silver like me, or of me, he meant don't make the human form. So basically, what the Gemora is saying is that there is a prohibition on making human form or human faces. But if you find an article, let's say that other people, Gentiles, etc., had put the human form on it or human face, that doesn't mean it's for sure Avodah Zarah. Maybe yes, maybe no. So the context of Rav Sheshes is for the craftsman. He shouldn't make human faces. So the Gemara asks, if you're now saying that the context of Rav Sheshes' teachings is with regard to the maker, the craftsman, I'm a safer. Look at the last of Rav Sheshes. Let's get muted. Of Rav Sheshes' three statements. What was the last of his statements? That every figure is okay, every form is okay, except for the form of a dragon. Just see. Whoops. Let's get this over here. Except for the form of a dragon. If you're talking about making Aima safer, look at the last of the three statements. Kol atzuras mutaris. All figures are permissible. Chutz mitzuras drakain, except for the image of the drakain, the dragon. And if you're talking about making tzuras drakain mi'asir, who prohibits making the form of this dragon? As it's written in Shmos Chav Gimel, don't make with me or like me gods of silver and gold. In other words, it seems that when the Pasuk talks about making, manufacturing or crafting Avodah Zarah, the hang-up, what you shouldn't do is make things that look like people, make things that look like the celestial spheres, but it doesn't seem to be a problem to make the dragon. If you find the dragon on something that the Gentiles made, then you have to worry, because in that day and age, they used to use that particular image for Avodah Zarah. So that would indicate that this article was used for idolatry. But if you're the craftsman and you want to make it, and you like that design, that's fine. So if it's about making, what is the problem with making the drakain? So the Gemara says, Hani, in these things, yes, you shouldn't make tzuras drakain loy. It doesn't say that you're prohibited to form the figure of a dragon. Elop shita. We now actually have turned the page onto 43a. Elop shita, but obviously, but might say the third, the sefer, the end, or the third, or the last, however you can look at it. The third of Rav Sheshes' three statements is definitely with reference to a finder, somebody that finds something, not a craftsman who's making something. Because he finds it, therefore it's a problem if it has a dragon image, because he's finding a dragon image that we know that other cultures use for idolatry. Okay, that none, and as the wording of the Mishnah suggests, he finds vessels, not he makes vessels, he finds vessels, and on them is the form of the sun. And the form of the sun is a sign of idolatry. Or the form of the moon is a sign of idolatry. The form of a dragon is a sign of idolatry. Making the dragon form yourself is not a question of idolatry. Let's just summarize this for a moment. So basically, just to put it in context, if you remember, Rav Sheshes had given three statements. 1, 2, and the middle one. Reisha, Seifa means the beginning, the end. And in a sandwich, you've got your two pieces of bread and your spread in the middle. So he gave a beginning and an end that is spread in the middle. The beginning was that he said, when it comes to the constellations, our problem is the sun and the moon. All other images are kosher. The last thing he said is that when it comes to figures of animals, the dragon is a problem. Everything else is okay. When it came to the middle, he said, when it comes to facial images, human faces are a problem. All others are okay. Now, we've got a problem, says the Gemora, because you would think that you've got one thread, one context throughout all of his statements. And it would seem we're moving from, are we talking about a craftsman who's making stuff and trying to find out what he shouldn't form? Are we talking about a finder? Reisha v'seifa b'moitza. So there's actually a question in the Gemara. Reisha v'seifa b'moitza. Are you suggesting that statement 1 and 3, the beginning and the end, are with reference to a finder, somebody who finds something and wants to know if the image on it is problematic or not? And in the middle, ba'isa, he's talking about a craftsman who wants to know whether he's allowed to make that at all. When it comes to the face, you say we're talking about a craftsman who wants to know whether he's allowed to craft the face at all. But the beginning and the end, the dragon and the constellations is about finding. You know, when we were in school, if you remember, the teachers would often say, if you write an essay, stick to one tense. You can't you, and suddenly in the middle it's we or me. If you're talking in this person or this tense, stay that way. If you're talking in keep it, consistent from beginning to end. So the Gemara is asking that kind of question. Where's the consistency? You've got 3 statements that were said together. Surely the context should be the same. That either all 3 are talking about a person who finds something and wants to know whether the image he found is a problem, or a person who's a craftsman and he's asking whether he's allowed to craft something with that image. Why are we swinging from one to the other? Can it be, says the Gemara, that the first and the last, 1 and 3, are about a finder, the middle one is about a craftsman? So Abaya says, yes, it can be that way. You've got an argument here, a machlokes between Rava and Abaya says, yes, can be that way, that he changed context in the middle. Abaya says, yes, in fact, it's true. The first and the last one are talking about somebody that finds a keli and he wants to know, I found it, and now I'm looking at the images on it. Does this mean it's avodah zarah or not? What's on it? Is it a problem? Or matziasa in the middle piece, ba'isa is a craftsman who's asking, I want to form this. Am I allowed to form a human face? Am I allowed to form an animal face? What kind of facial things can I sculpt or form myself? Abaya is satisfied that it doesn't matter to move around the context of the statement. Rava says no. Rava says you have to say that it's all one theme across. Rava says kula b'moitza, it must all be one theme across. Meaning, all 3 of Rav Shesh's statements are to do with a man who finds something. Has to always be that way. In other words, whether it's the dragon, whether it's the sun and the moon image, whether it's the facial image, which is either a person's or an animal's or some other kind of angel face, whatever you want to call it, we're dealing with a person who finds something. He didn't make it, he found it. But now, how do you answer that original question that we had, that finding something with the facial image is not supposed to be a problem? So Rava explains it his own way. The middle statement, Rav Sheshes is basing himself on Rabbi Yehuda. Yehuda was stricter than ages, and he had images that worried him, that were problematic. The Tanya, we learned in a brisa, Rabbi Yehuda Moisef, Rabbi Yehuda added certain facial images to the list of prohibited images. So, for instance, Rav Sheshes had said that all faces are okay, except for the face of humans. And now the rabbis are saying, hold on, in other places we say a human face is not a problem. So what is the issue here? So Rava says, according to Rabbi Yehuda, there were certain facial images, human facial images, not all of them, but certain ones that became a problem. Which ones? 2 specific ones. One was, interestingly enough, the image of a nursing woman, a lady who's nursing a baby. The image of a woman nursing a baby was a particular kind, and again, the context was that obviously there was a certain group that this was the image of their deity. They thought it's a very nourishing kind of image, a woman nursing a baby. So they would take that image and they would engrave it or sculpt it, and that was what they felt was something to pray to, because it symbolized human nourishment at the very outset. And the other thing was that they said that Joseph, we were talking about him before, Joseph, when he was in Egypt and he was the viceroy, second in command to Pharaoh, there was a big famine and he fed the whole land, he fed the whole world. He was the one who figured out how to store, it's this week's Bacher, and the next few weeks Bacher. It's coming up now. He was the one who figured out how to have
This
food.
week's Bacher,
He gets sold into
the dream,
slavery,
the
the
dreams.
dreams and the slavery. But it starts that whole story this week.
Starts from the
Yeah.
from
It starts. It's Paris dream already.
could be the fun.
And then yeah. But anyways, so Rabbi Yehuda, it's Rabbi Yehuda the Tanya, because we learned in a Braisa. What did we learn? Rabbi Yehuda Moisif of the Mus Meinika. Rabbi Yehuda adds human images that could possibly be deities. The image of a nursing lady, a Sar Apis, and a certain image called Sar Apis. Sar Apis is the prince of appeasement and sustenance. Joseph was considered a prince or a deity of appeasement and sustenance because he was somebody who fed the whole world. Menikal Shem Chava. The nursing woman was based on the first lady that ever lived, Eve or Chava, Shemenika Kol Olam Kuloi, who nourished the whole world. She was the feminine nourisher of all humanity, the mother of everybody. Sar Apis, the prince of appeasement and sustenance, Al Shem Yosef, was based on Joseph, Shesaru Mapis Kol Olam Kuloi, that appeased and sustained with food the entire world. So those images were used by certain cultures as an idolatrous image, and those are ones you have to look out for. Who the Nokit Griva the Kokile, but you know what you have to look out for, says the Gemora. Where that image is done for idolatry, whoever's culture it was to have such an image, you would actually have to have that this woman is actually holding a baby and nursing. The image would be of her actually nursing. Or the image would have to be of Joseph with like a measuring cup that you use to actually distribute grain. It needs to be in its fullest expression. In the case of Joseph, it would be that he's holding a measuring cup and dispersing grain. And when it comes to the nursing woman, that is like Eve, the Noktabain, that she is actually holding a child, V'komanika nursing it. In that situation, these images are also idolatrous images, and these were added to the other images that we had in the previous Bryce and Mishnah. So remember, we said this, and this, and everything else is okay. That's everybody else's opinion. According to Rabbi Yehuda, you have to add these images in as well. Okay, that's perfect. So we'll continue. Yeah.
With not coming out of the breasts and no child. They're not going to show that in the pulled it down, put it somewhere. It's available. Some people.
Who made that image?
Sorry, I don't know who did it, but I know that it's not
Mark, yes, it's certainly not appropriate for us. Yeah. Okay, so we'll continue the next time with
Next Sunday is Hanukkah.
oh, that's right. Next week is already Hanukkah.
So I think we should like have l'chaim for
Is it the 7th?
So we're going to call to January.
Okay, is the 7th Monday or Tuesday?
This
We close on the 9th, which is a Thursday. Must be
Yeah,
Hanukkah
is a hard one.
It's a Tuesday.
Thursday night starts Hanukkah.
we
Okay.
should
Yeah, it is a bit hard because everyone's going to like them and notice. So that means we are we're saying goodbye till January. Yeah. Wow.
Hanukkah starts Thursday night.
Yeah. Because it's Hanukkah. It's difficult to run on Hanukkah. I can't believe that the year comes to an end so quick. Yo. Heads on coins. No, it's still coming.
Still coming.
Yeah, it's still coming.
Pictures, I think, something like that. Oh, somebody poured it away. I've seen it somewhere.
It comes from that. L'chaim, everybody. L'chaim. Wishing everybody restful
Peace in Israel.
peace and Israel.
Captain should come back.
L'chaim, Rov.
L'chaim said,
Rabbi, when we talk about idolatry,
certainly returned.
in the davening, we always mention our name, right?
yeah, it's Sydney.
At the end.
Sydney, the guys want to see you. Since you're the only one who's showing a picture.
His leg's not there.
No, Les doesn't have a picture. Maybe, I'm not sure. There we go.
You gorgeous man.
Sydney.
Oh, look at that! Look at that!
Are you doing
That- Natal Sharks jersey. I'm pleased he's very loyal. How's it, everybody?
The Sharks got smart.
But Mark, when you come into Durban,
10. What did I say?
There's Leslie.
Sydney.
Ah,
guys.
Les is back. How's it,
everybody.
Les?
Yeah, how
We're
are
just-
you? It's very
Just saying goodbye to everybody because we're basically breaking for, and please
Oh, mate.
pray for-
It's on top Wednesday.
Took them 100 years to